The Fog and Creepshow are probably two of the most requested titles we've ever had at this series. I get more emails about those two films than any other, so it was kind of fitting that you were our candidate for this award. Your work in all of these films has been so wonderful, and also so, I've been using the word human. I don't know if that makes any sense, but like you seem like one of us in all these movies, even though in this film you're very much the hero. And in our editor, Anne, in making that clip reel, was trying to point out the fact that she sees you as the hero, she saw you as the hero in all of these roles that you've had. I've gone off track from the question I wanted to ask, but maybe we can...
Do you really think Billy was a hero?
Oh no, Billy was definitely not a hero. That must have been a lot of fun, but, I mean, what do you think got you all of these tough roles?
I had an Armenian grandmother and an Armenian mother and a bunch of Armenian aunts, and I really think that has something to do with it. You know, my family survived the genocide in Turkey. My grandmother came over, and I guess they were all sort of strong women. One of the first stage roles that I did, oh, not the first stage role, but the one that brought me to television and film was Grease, the original Lizzo. And if you remember, I guess the reason that comes to mind is because, you know, another tough girl, and even before that, on Broadway, I was the second daughter in Fiddler on the Roof, and she was the strong one that goes off to, you know, I would be hard-pressed probably to play a real victim.
Sure.
It just doesn't sit well with me. But in The Fog, the three fishermen, and the thin fisherman, the youngest fisherman, you know, the one that comes out of the window, or out of the cabinet. That's Jim Canning, and Jim and I were both in the original production of Grease. That's just a little trivia that has nothing to do with anything else. That's cool. As I was watching it, I thought, oh yes.
Have you seen the film recently?
No, I've seen it once in, well, let's see, we did it in '79, so I probably saw it in '99 maybe, or 2004, when maybe they did a 25th anniversary screening at a horror convention, and they showed it outside on a big screen, you know, in a parking lot, and that was the first time I saw it, along with Tom Atkins, who was there, and who has remained a very, very close friend. So no, I haven't seen it. I will say, for those of you, if you ever want to see it again, as wonderful as it was to see this, you know, a 35 millimeter, the color on the
sure, yeah,
the area of the country. We shot in Point Reyes in Inverness, which is just 26 miles north of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, and it's one of the most beautiful parts of the country that you can imagine. If you ever get a chance to go there, you can visit the lighthouse. I think it's almost as much a character in the film and as important an element of the film as all our performances were.
The amount of requests that we've had for this movie, I mean, shows how important it is to, it has so many fans, and super fans, not just fans, but people who love this film so very much. I'm one of them, but I wonder if, I mean, watching it here tonight, how do you feel about this movie? What does this movie mean to you, having just sat through it for the first time in so long?
Well, I'll tell you what it meant to me when John handed me the script and read the script, and this would have been in 1978, late 1978. It was the height of the women's movement, the Equal Rights Amendment. You know, we had just gotten Roe versus Wade, and I was coming off of a series that was very socially significant. And this was my first feature, and I read it, and it wasn't the China syndrome. You know? It was like, but this is a ghost story. And I'm not, if any of you know me, I'm not a fan of the genre. I don't like to be scared. I don't like to go see them. I love to do them, but you're not going to find me in the audience. I've never even seen Psycho. But so originally it was like, okay, you know. Now, of course, as I said when we started, who knew that many years ago that these films, the ones that you've been showing, Creepshow certainly, Swamp Thing and The Fog, would have such a life and would bring me so much joy at this time in my life because, you know, people are watching them. I have people come up to me and say, oh, we watch The Fog once a month, or, you know, Creepshow, you know, and certainly every Halloween. I mean, all of these things come out. So it's, and I guess I was pleased to see that there's not much I would have changed in my I mean, I think she was honest and.
Oh, it's a wonderful performance.
I was surprised that I always thought my voice was lower. When I first started talking, I thought, wait a minute, are they speeding up to get me sound? But I was very fortunate to be a part of it.
And you're still working a lot.
I just did a film with Ray Wise from Swamp Thing. Yeah. A psychological thriller called The Chain that, you know, hopefully we'll be seeing after the first of the year. And I just did a film with Rance Howard, who we just lost. I just had a cameo in it. But yeah, I just finished 5 independents, you know, and some of them might be good. One with Lance Henriksen, which we'll see about that.
Questions from the audience? I'll try to see. Yes, right here. I'll try to repeat the question for everybody back there.
I'm just curious. You know, you talked a little bit going into how in '78, especially, you were coming out of the big feminist movement and from Maud and everything. I'm curious. You know, you have this great history of scripts that have strong female, very human female characters, and you talk about how you're attracted to them because of your own strong history, but do you recognize that when you're reading a script, and when you are reading a script, what attracts you to that character?
The first people, you know, and people ask also, what would you rather do, film or television or stage? And the first thing I take into account is the character herself. I just finished, in fact, I was here in Boston at the Boston Opera House, or is that what it's called, Boston Opera House? Doing Pippin on stage. I don't love going on stage at night because I'd rather work at, you know, 5 in the morning, but who could turn down a role like that at my age where you get to hang upside down from a trapeze, you know, and sing a song with your head on the ground, and so it's always the role, and yes, they are all strong. I'm thinking are some of the ones that I've done recently not heroines. I don't know if anybody saw Sons of Anarchy, but I did. She certainly wasn't a heroine, but she was strong. So yeah, I mean, my first thing is, has the writer spelled the words correctly? Because you'd be surprised how many scripts I get where, you know, you read the first 2 pages and I think, you know what, if this guy didn't have, I want to say the balls, but the wherewithal to send it through at least spell check, I mean, you know, he doesn't care about the product. I'm not going to want to work with this man or this woman, whoever's written the script. But yeah, the first thing I look at is the character. And then the overall script. I mean, there's been films that I've taken. I took one film because it was shooting in Moscow, and I wanted to go to Moscow. And God forbid anybody should see it, but you know, I got to go to Moscow. And I took another film because my house had termites. And I had a tent in my house. And there have been times when I've taken films because I have two boys who are in college. And, but when I have my brothers, it's because there's something about the character that I respond to. You showed a film, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, a 22-minute,
Right,
my first zombie film.
Alice Jacobs is dead.
Yes, called Alice Jacobs is Dead. I'd never done a zombie film before. It was just a short film, and when the director offered it to me, my agency said, "You're not going to do this. This is like, you know, there's no money. There's 4 days." But there was something, and you know, having seen it, about the character that I really responded to, because in my mind it was not a film about a woman who was turning into a zombie. It was a film about maybe a woman who knew she had Alzheimer's. I mean, it was the same kind of thing. What do you do in that situation? So, yeah, it's the character first.
It's a great short. Up top. I'll go into the back and then we'll come down here. Yes, sir.
I was wondering, speaking of past films, if there was ever a role that you may have passed by or rejected and maybe disappointed that you weren't in that film later on.
Any regrets for passing on a role is the question.
I don't regret it, or I didn't regret it until I saw Bill Moseley at a convention signing autographs and he had a line of people out the door. But I got a script once for a horror film, and it was presented to me as being directed by a very successful rock and roll guy who was also directing. And I read, I don't think I even finished it, I read maybe the first 20 or 30 pages, and I called the agency and I said, "I can't do this. This is just so vile and so, you know, just grotesque and vile, and I can't even remember, and vulgar and whatever it was." And about a year later, I was at a horror convention, and there was Bill Moseley, who had been in Carnival with me. And Bill was signing it. I mean, he had a line of people, you know. I said, "Bill, what's the project? What did you do?" "The one I turned down, Devil's Rejects." Rob Zombie. I still wouldn't have done it. I couldn't. I just couldn't. But have I turned down anything that then went on where I really regretted it? I can't think of anything, you know. I mean, I'm sure there are a lot that I would have loved to do that I didn't get offered, but that's the only one I know I turned down that, you know, made a lot of money for somebody. I couldn't have lived with myself.
Yes.
Hi, it's more of a compliment. Thank you so much for the body of work you've done. You're an icon.
The comment is that Adrienne is an icon. Yeah, that you're an icon.
Oh, thank you.
You are an icon. You're like a fine wine. You just keep getting better.
Are you listening to this? This is your mother he's talking about.
Your children are here, sir.
I think I'm good.
Anyone else? Questions? Yes.
Sorry, I should have thought about how to ask this more. What constitutes a strong character for you? Like, how do you recognize, because earlier, I think somebody else was asking, how do you recognize what reaction you have to a character that you're reading for?
The question is, how does Adrienne recognize a strong character or identify a strong character
Like, how do you
in a
evaluate
script? How do you evaluate?
How do I evaluate a script?
Or like the strength of the character or something? Like, what strength do you use, so to speak?
You know, I guess I don't necessarily look for, oh, is she a strong woman? What I look for is, and what comes to mind is I was just offered it's sort of like a Hallmark kind of film, a love story, and there was a role there, but it was not was not written logically. It was not, I didn't understand why the woman was behaving the way she was behaving, and I said to my agents, I would be interested enough in talking to the writer-director and telling him, I know this woman, she's a sort of a domineering, strong mother. I said, I know this woman, but the words on the page that he's got her there, it was too cliched, it wasn't, it didn't follow logically why she was doing what she was doing. And so we had I had a conversation with the director, and he said, anything you want to do, you know, all of that makes sense. And so I basically sort of, I wrote out, I didn't even write out notes, I wrote out dialogue for him, and I said, you know, this makes sense if she does this or if she does that. And it ended up being something I think I'm going to be proud of. I was pleased with it. That's not quite answering your question, I guess I'm leading you astray if I say I only look for strong characters, but I look for, well, that's, I guess the first thing I always look for is honesty. I mean, can I find myself in this role, or the honesty in this role? And that's not helping you either. Well, you know, I almost turned down Billy in Creepshow, again, because when I read the screenplay, and I didn't know George Romero at all, and I didn't know, you know, I thought, oh God, I can't do this. I mean, again, this is too vile, the movie is too gross, and it's too gory and everything. And then Tom Atkins, well, I was married to John Carpenter by that time, and John was saying to me, are you kidding? You can't turn down an opportunity to work with George Romero. But Tom Atkins had already been cast. Tom plays the father in the interstitials, you know, and Tom and I are very, very close friends. And I called Tommy and I said, Tom, you're doing this movie? I mean, it's really, you know. And he said, oh no, you don't understand at all. George is gonna make it like a comic book, and it's gonna be, you know, and of course it turned out to be one of my favorite things, but again, I mean, she's a strong character, you know. Maybe I'm talking about a strength in personality, whether it's, I'm trying to think of somebody that I could not have played. To give you an example, well, I don't play victims very well.
Right, you wouldn't
I just
cast
don't,
as a
I don't play,
damsel
you
in
know,
distress.
yeah, not really, you know, not too much.
We just watched you fight off ghost fishermen and power up a generator and save an entire town. That's kind of
In
where-
those boots.
Right?
Walk down 345 stairs in those boots.
Any other questions? Yes. Yeah, Ethan.
Okay. You mentioned Creepshow a minute ago. I'm curious if you have any interesting behind-the-scenes stories of that.
The question is, are there any interesting behind-the-scenes stories from the Creepshow show? What was it? What I want to know is, what's the name of the monster in that segment?
Fluffy.
Sorry.
But you know, and now people ask me, and I don't even remember if it was an animatronic or if there was somebody inside it. You know, those things sort of have gone out of my mind. Well, I don't drink. I've never liked it. You know, so I just have never drunk. I just never didn't like the heat of it or something. So suddenly I'm, you know, being called upon to play a, you know, raging alcoholic. And, that was a stretch. I think don't I drink milk and I drink
Milk and scotch.
Milk and scotch. When I first moved to New York to be an actress, I took a job at a nightclub that was run by the Genovese family. I mean, the guy, Matty the horse. You know, Matty the horse Iannello. It was run, and Matty's brother Sal was one of the people that worked in the club. And he always drank scotch and milk, so that's where I got that idea from, really. More than that, behind the scenes stories, I had a great time making it. I love George more than anything in the world. I love Pittsburgh. And I don't remember anything else that... I stayed away from the set when E.G. Marshall was doing his stuff, because I've worked with snakes and tarantulas and bees and you name it, but I'm not gonna work with cockroaches. And they did get out. I think that George had brought up a bunch of South American roaches or something, and
Yes, in the front.
I loved you in Back to School.
Oh, thank you.
Find that character was comparable to Creepshow.
Yeah.
The two characters.
It's high praise for Back to School.
And the other one was fog. Did you have to do that a lot of the scenes?
You know-
Climbing up the ladder and climbing on the roof?
Yes, but the interesting thing about the last scene, and it was interesting for me to see it because I've told this story several times, but I haven't seen the film for so many years. In those days, no CGI, obviously, and we were working with what they called the fog juice, which was, I think it was kerosene or oil or something. It smelled.
Something safe.
Yeah, it was really terrible stuff. And all they could do with it was to use billows or fans or whatever to blow it into the scene. Well, that very last scene after, you know, Hal has given up the gold and you come back to Stevie Wayne and suddenly the ghosts have disappeared, John came to me and he said, you know, we can't evacuate the fog from the scene the way what you watched happened. So we have to film the scene in reverse. We have to film the scene, let me see if I can even explain it to you, where the fog is already left and I'm relieved or I'm bemused, you know, and then I'm relieved or, you know, and then go back to the terror because the fog is still around me. And so I acted it in reverse, they filmed it in reverse, and then and maybe Wes can explain because, and then they flipped the negative when they developed it or something. Is that sort of how it works? And all John said to me was, just be careful when you're doing it that you don't blink. Because if you blink quickly or something, it looks very bizarre on camera. I don't know. I don't know if I answered your question. You were asking about the fog.
I was asking about the heels, like climbing
Oh, the
ladder.
heels. You know, I spent my first 8 years as an actress, I was in Manhattan, and I was in high-heel boots for, you know, all those years, so I had a lot of experience with it. Yeah. Plus, I'm short, so I was always wearing, platform heels. Oh.
Yes, up there.
So this is going to be another half-mixed question and compliment. The highlights reel, I'll admit for one, I had forgotten you were in Batman the Animated Series, so seeing those movies there was a great reminder.
Thank you.
And because you put so much in that role, I was wondering, was voice acting any different for you at the time, or was that just, it was sitting an idea of getting into the character and go from there? Because I know there's some actors that can't make the jump to behind the microphone as readily as they can in front of the camera.
You know what was, the only difference was I didn't have to put on makeup and I didn't have to wear a costume, and that was so fantastic. No, it wasn't very different. I mean, you still, and we were very fortunate with Batman because we had such a fantastic booth director that a lot of it came from the director because we were all, you know, sitting in a room and we had the words on the page, but we didn't have the visuals. She had the visuals. So if Catwoman is running across the top of a roof and she jumps down onto the ground and lands and goes, then Andrea, the booth director, would say, Adrienne, it's a 3-story building, it's not a 1-story building. that would be the difference. But for me, it wasn't I think when I first started studying animation and everything, and I'm not I have a very limited, compared to some of the actors that I've worked with, I have a limited range for animation. I can play the queens and the villains and the robots, and as you know from the thing. And but there are some people, I still remember an actress named Susan Blue who could do a 4-year-old boy with a cold, and it's brilliant, or do a Frank Welker doing Scooby-Doo the dog, But one of the things that I did realize early on, even in auditioning, is you have to decide because, but it's the same with regular acting. What's just happened, what's happened right before, and who you're talking to, and sort of visualize some of the action. Not too much different. I have since, in the last 8 or 9 years, done more video games, and they're pretty much like animation too. Mad Max and Halo 4 and God of War and I don't know, Batman Arkham Asylum, some of those,
You mentioned playing the voice of the computer in The Thing.
Yeah.
I feel like there are a few films where you're the voice of the computer, and some of them are even uncredited. Is it Demolition Man where you're also the computer in that film? How do you keep
I got a
getting cast?
residual check for that. I think Judge Dredd too.
Judge Dredd, yeah.
What is this?
You're the computer in every 90s action film. Really?
I don't remember doing the voice for The Thing, but I know I did because John told me I did. But I guess they were just, I really don't remember those two at all. And I've never seen Judge Dredd. I don't know if I've seen Demolition Man or not.
We should have done a compilation of all
voiceovers.
of voice, but also just the computers talking back to that would have been neat. All the way in the back.
What's it like working with Harry Dean Stanton? That
I loved Harry. I think Harry was the only one who gave John problems because Harry liked to ad-lib, and John's not into ad-libbing, so there were a couple times when he sort of had to say, well, now Harry, but he was great. He was just great. That whole cast, Donald Pleasance.
Yeah, I was just listening to that soundtrack while I'm welding. I was welding, I was listening to Escape from New York and everything.
Yeah.
And the Fog, and Creepshow.
The hardest, the most difficulty I had on that movie was working with Donald Pleasance because he made me laugh. And we'd be getting ready to start, John would say, okay, rolling, and I'd say, stop, you can't, I'm not ready. Donald, you've got to stop it. Because he was one of the funniest actors I've ever worked with. He had just that dry British wit that just got me going. So, but I loved Harry Dean and his work in everything was...
You were a sex symbol for the 70s and 80s, and you remained in phenomenal shape all through. Is there pressure to do that?
The question is there pressure to remain in shape because of your sex symbol status?
When I first felt the pressure, I had been in New York for 8 years. I'd been on Broadway. My last show was Grease, and singing and dancing, and probably at least 10 or 15 pounds heavier than I am now. And I mean, who ever thought anything about it? We were all in good shape, and we were on stage and everything. And I came to LA to do Maude, and there was an underlying message, you should be a little thinner for the camera, you should be a little thinner for the camera, and I did everything. I mean, I did, I think there was a time when we were getting shots of horse urine or something. Nothing worked. until I
Fog juice, there was fog juice.
And over the years, I mean, I just, at some point, well, I mean, I don't know how much you guys want to know, but when I had my kids, I just lost my appetite and I lost weight and it's never come back. So it's not something I worry about. But what I do see is, I mean, anybody, you look at, you know, actors, actresses, and actors now, who are in their 30s and in their 40s and they're messing up their faces because there is such, in their minds, you know, you gotta look like the 20-year-old, and they're ruining it, and I couldn't do that. I've been and yeah, I look in the mirror and I think, well, you know, that's you're not going to be doing that anymore. But I've had good genes, and I've been sort of fortunate, and yeah. So, but it's not something that's on my mind. Or you know what? It's on my mind. And then it's like, well, this is what it is, so this is what they get, and if this is what they want to hire, then that's what they'll go for, you know.
Yes. The comment was that Adrienne is a Christmas gift to us all.
Few weeks ago, some of us there actually saw John perform with Cody.
With Cody.
Yeah.
With
How much of a thrill is that to have
That was-
Cody perform with John?
It was,
And if I can ask, what kind of relationship do you have with John?
with John,
Good
we have a good relationship. I don't talk, I see him very often, you know, but my second vampire novel has been optioned for the screen, and I'm hoping we can get John to do the music for it. But it was so emotional for me, I think, to see the two of them working together. Because over the years, I mean, you know, Cody's always going off to his dad's to work on the music, work on the music, work on the music. And then suddenly I'm seeing, and to see John turn to his son for direction, really. I mean, I don't know if you noticed that, but John's looking at Cody like, okay, is this where we, you know, that was, it really was.
We were waiting for you to come out on.
Oh, yeah, that's not it. But I was on screen.
Yeah, that's right.
Yes.
You had mentioned something about starred actors and actresses who are struggling. They really want to retain youthful looks by any means. Historically, Hollywood has been very stingy with complex roles for actresses as they get older. Have you noticed that? Have you struggled with that at all?
I have, what I am noticing just in this year's supply of films, because I ended up, you know, through no choice of my own, but I was one of the 2,500 SAG members that got chosen by computer to be on the nominating committee. So I'm seeing a lot of films that I might not have seen. There's a lot more good material for women. It seems like Annette Bening in Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool, and Laurie Metcalf in I want to say Birdcage, and that's not what it's called. Lady Bird. And certainly Frances McDormand and Julie Waters in Film Stars Don't Die in Liverpool. So maybe there's a bit of, you're certainly seeing it more on film, I mean on television. Of course, I watch a lot of British mysteries, and they do great work for older women, older actresses, you know. Yeah, I mean, certainly I don't get, you know, I'm not necessarily going to play the lead. I'm certainly not going to play the lead in an action adventure like I used to. Although, what did I just finish doing? But I'm hopeful that maybe we're seeing more parity in the sexes, in the roles that are being offered.
We've got time for one more, like a great one. No pressure.
So you've made movies, you've done TV, you've done theater, you're an author, you're a mom. What do you want to be remembered for?
Oh, being a
The
mom.
question with everything that Adrienne's done, including being a mother and author, and all the mediums she's worked in, what would she like to be remembered for?
I just hope that my kids will say she was a good mom. That's it.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Adrienne. Thanks to all of you for coming.